Along with Nick Earnshaw, I'm Josh Hennick, filling for Mike Gill here at Football at Ford, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and it's being brought to you by the Gallery Bar Booking Games at Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City. Go to the Gallery, go to Ocean, go for the win this football season. For more information, visit theoceanac.com. Eagles Preseason Game 2, the takeaways with NFL insider Adam Caplan here on 97.3 ESPN. Adam, welcome in. How you doing today?
Josh, I'm good. I'm glad to be back in my office for a couple days here. I'll go to Eagles practice tomorrow. Before I go on the road again, I'm going to finish my training camp tour my 21st. I was with the Titans and Seahawks this week. But, yeah, look, the Eagles, as we move along here, the Eagles play their second preseason game. They'll finish next week on a very rare 1 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. on a Saturday. They played plenty of preseason games at night on Saturday at home, but I don't remember them ever playing at 1 o'clock on a Saturday, which is interesting.
So, Adam, let's get to some of the takeaways from last night, which was certainly not the prettiest game in the world to watch. And part of the problem was that second unit offensive line. Man, they had some struggles, Adam. I mean, Brett Toth, I still don't understand why this guy keeps getting so much backup center time when he has trouble snapping the ball like that. Talk to us about the offensive line struggles last night.
Yeah, so they started 5 backups. In fact, Josh, all 11 starters were backups last night, whereas defensively, which you'll get, they started a handful of starters, but this is what they did in the first game. Now, just like the first game, weather was concerned. It rained off and on in New England, where in Foxborough it did last night, but in Baltimore, it actually, where they had very bad storms, you and I talked about this last week, it actually dried up before the game, but they wanted to take a chance. And now that the Eagles, Josh, have not played their offensive starters in the first 2 games, I just don't see them playing in Game 3. It's not the dress rehearsal game anymore because the teams don't look at it that way. Well, before we get out of here, I'll tell you what teams have told me about playing players in preseason and so forth. But getting back to the Eagles' offensive line, Tyler Steen, unfortunately, he got hurt again. It's the same ankle, I believe. He showed tremendous toughness playing last week against Baltimore. It just didn't hold up. I was surprised, Josh, that after the game, right, the Baltimore game, and you could clearly see if you watched it that he was laboring a little bit. He was not even listed on their post-game injury report, and he didn't miss practice time last week. I was surprised by that. But look, he got hurt. You don't like that. Darian Kennard started again at right tackle. Keegan, who's only played left guard, he started again, and Fred Johnson is their backup left tackle, and Brett Toth. So. Yeah, we'll find out. We'll put this more on our show for Monday morning on Inside the Birds. We'll find out how he graded Brett Toth. But yeah, he's clearly the second team center. I'm a little surprised that Matt Hennessy, Josh, has not gotten a shot to be that second team center. That has kind of been one of the surprises we've gotten in training camp. Though he's gotten some snaps at center, he's not really been the second team center. And last night would have been a good time to do it, but they did not.
And of course, last night, it was Kenny Pickett and that second unit O-line against the first team Patriots. But then in the second half, it was Tanner Mcke, for lack of a better term, shining against the Patriots backups in a backup versus backup matchup. Adam, you and Jeff have talked about on the Inside the Birds podcast about how much the Eagles like their developmental quarterback, Tanner Mcke.
Yeah, last year, training camp wasn't great, but his preseason tape was so good. And you mentioned the developmental term. You're not going to put a guy on waivers who put out tape that teams could see. Teams can't see your practice tape. They can't see your joint practice tape either, but they can see the game tape. Every team sees that. So you're not going to try to sneak him through waivers. That would have been a mistake, and they didn't. And he's had a good training camp, way better training camp this year than last year. You know, he's looked good in the preseason. The context is obviously you're talking about third team defense for New England. A lot of guys who probably won't even be on their football team, some might not even be on the practice squad, but you give him credit. Threw it with great timing. I love that he's willing to hang in there with bodies around him. You like that. And the thing that we don't talk about enough, and I saw this when I've been at camp, is Josh, he's a little bit more mobile this year. He was not, but this year he's more mobile. He's throwing on the run a little bit. Threw from the pocket very well last night. Joseph Ngata was one of his guys last night. I was impressed. I mean, he did a good job. Now, Pickett was under duress a lot. For his first 2 games, his average per pass attempts not very high at all, where McKee's is way higher. I'm a little concerned about that. Not way higher, but it's higher. I'm concerned that the protection's not there. By the way, Pickett is more mobile than Mcke. He could run. He was more of a runner at Pitt than he has been in the pros. But the Eagles made it clear. The head coach made it clear. Pickett's the 2, Mcke's the 3, and that's that. But remember, Pickett signed through 25. Mcke is signed through 26. So it's not out of the question that Tanner Mcke is the long-term backup for Jalen Hurts.
Hey, Adam, it's Nick. One guy who continues to impress is Will Shipley. He's showing off his versatility. He can do a lot of different things. Had that 19-yard screen pass yesterday that he caught. What have you seen out of Will Shipley, and what has the Eagles coaching staff thought of Will Shipley throughout this preseason so far?
Yeah, I know people are talking about him on social media. He's certainly in his little package of plays, which he'll have during the season. He's a chance to help the football team because he could catch. I mean, he moves. We've talked about this now for 3 months. He moves better than Gainwell. Gainwell's a better pass protector. Remember, though, this is Gainwell's last year of his contract, so if the Eagles don't bring him back, Shipley could certainly be the number 2 next season. But right now, Shipley on that 2nd and 22, that screen pass that he caught was really nice for 19 yards. And you got to be patient on screens. Now, I know there was a lot of space because the Patriots were backed off. We got to give proper context. He also got stuffed on a couple runs, but he also showed good vision. And look, he's shown that he'll be a solid 3 in the kind of role that he has. They've got a couple guys that they like. Milton was the one who scored the short yardage touchdown. Maybe he's a practice squad guy. Lou Nichols is a guy is higher thought. Ty Davis Price, who led them in rushing last night. He had a 13-yarder. He's more of a zone runner. But yeah, look, this is a stacked running back room, and the good thing is they've got a mixture of younger guys, and they've got the older guy, obviously, in Saquon Barkley.
Adam Caplan, Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, InsideTheBirds.com, Inside the Birds on YouTube. Don't forget to download the latest edition of the Inside the Birds podcast. Like, subscribe, wherever you get your podcasts. Adam, sticking on offense for one more. Joseph Ngata finally has a game. I feel like we've been hearing about and talking about this guy for a couple of years now, and finally, on the sloppy surface of Foxborough, he goes off.
Yeah, and last year, Josh, he was the story of training camp. But because he has separation issues, that means at the top of his route, he's got to be able to separate from the DB, and he just doesn't do that well enough, and that's why he was not drafted. But he's got a big body, and he's a guy, look, at best, he's an NFL number 5, okay? That has some value, whether it's on special teams or if you're backing up the X position, which is A.J. Brown's position, maybe if they continue to hang in with him, maybe he eventually becomes in their backup rotation. So, yeah, it was good. He caught all 5 targets. That's important. You saw the chemistry here with Tanner Mcke. I thought that was good. And he showed up. Like he's a guy that you kind of know what you're getting. I don't see him all of a sudden finding the ability to separate. It's kind of like, I don't want to say it's either you have it or you don't. You can improve on it, obviously, with coaching. But he's just not good enough in that area, and that's why it's going to be hard for him to make the football team.
Adam, let's flip it over to the defensive side of the ball where, there were only 4 starters on the field against the Patriots, but, man, that Nakobe Dean, it keeps looking pretty good, Adam, and this linebacker position is starting to create some separation, at least in terms of the haves and the have-nots.
Yep, it is. Now, Dean, look, he's had let's be honest, he's had a very uneven training camp. Over the last week and a half, he's practiced better. He had a really good practice, the joint practice a couple of days ago, and he showed up in this game. The instincts were never a problem. It's having a smaller frame. We know about the injury history, staying on the field, that kind of thing. So he showed up, no doubt about it. Now, they did start Zach Bond, who was better in this game, with Devin White. And you mentioned, Josh, the only starters, the projected starters that played, and we have to put them in context, that's projected. Bond right now is a starter. He's not a lock to start. Dean now legitimately is pushing him for the first time. Rogers started. We should mention that. I don't understand this. I'm looking for clarification. I don't know why Bryce Huff started. I know that he needs more work in this defense. This is like a complete 180 from the defense that he played with the Jets. So this is a lot. He's going to drop in coverage more. It's different for him. And he showed up. Look, the joint practice, he was great. This game, he was great, Bryce Huff. So Josh, that's an interesting story. that was a stunner to me. I'm like, why, when you're starting so few starters, is a guy's making $17 million a season in the starting lineup? That's not what you normally would do.
Adam, Nolan Smith looked really good last night. He had a sack on Drake May as well. I mean, he's going to be a guy who the Eagles are really going to need to step up this season, and he continues to improve. What were some of your takeaways from Nolan Smith?
Yeah, the sack that he had was tremendous. That's a second reaction sack. He actually got chipped, and there were two guys there, and he didn't stop on a second reaction sack. That's a great job by him. Last week, he had the scouting term is called, he had an open sack where you're not blocked. All you have to do is actually tackle. It's right there. Just tackle the guy, and he did. This was a good play. We'll find out what the tape looked like. So, whereas Bryce Huff, we should mention, only played 10 snaps, 18% of the defensive snaps. They took a broader look at Nolan Smith. Nolan Smith is a guy that we could debate. How good is Nolan Smith going to be? He's a smaller guy. We mentioned on Inside the Birds that he's put some weight on. You like that, but he played a lot last night. He played 43% of the snaps, and he's going to be their top outside pass rusher, their top edge rusher coming off the bench. He's got to show he can do it, guys, against a first team offensive line or first team offense. And that, to me, and I know he didn't start last night, but that to me is what he's got to show up and do, because he's played. Look, he's come in off the bench against ones in practice, but he's not a starting outside backer, and that's. I mean, so I'm sorry. Last night he did technically start with Huff. That's actually their alignment as I look at it. He did start, but they've gotten a better look at him in training camp. And you're right, Nick. He is improving, but he's got to be more consistent. And the thing is, guys, we have to understand he's got a smaller frame. He put weight on his frame, but he's not a big frame guy, and that's what showed up against Baltimore. He got blocked pretty easily last week, not so much in this game.
Adam, in the secondary, James Bradberry has been trying to make that transition from outside corner to safety, and he got a little testy with the media after the game last night when they were asking him about it. It seems like, as Vic Fangio predicted, this transition from corner to safety is going to be a little more complicated than some people may have thought.
Yeah, and Josh, he did start in this game and at safety. And look, it wasn't great. It wasn't great. It was just the snaps that he had late in the game, late in his tenure playing in this game. He had a couple bad snaps, a couple bad plays. And see, I was laughing with someone this morning. If the Eagles thought that maybe they could get a conditional 7th round pick for him, well, that kind of went out the door, because again, the other clubs could see this tape. They get access to it. They don't get access to practice tape or joint practice tape, but they could see this. And you don't want to make a super big deal about it, because yes, he had a couple of plays that he'd like to have back. He's had a good training camp. It's been kind of a good story, and he did play a lot last night. He played 54% of the snaps. He played 30 snaps. They got a pretty good look at him, and he played 2 special team snaps, by the way. But overall, Josh, it's going to be fascinating to see what happens here, because Gardner Johnson still isn't ready coming back from his shoulder. We don't know exactly when Sidney Brown's going to come back, so the safety depth is still an issue.
Adam Caplan, Football and Forward, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, InsideTheBirds.com, Inside the Birds on YouTube, at Caplan NFL on the Twitter X platform, and don't forget about the Inside the Birds content on Patreon. Adam, great stuff today. Enjoy the weekend. We'll talk soon.
Sounds good, guys. Thanks.